President Trump's attempted impeachment is a coup. A coup is still a coup even if it's not achieved through a violent military takeover. And I'm going to explain why. This is Carl Brizzi. You're listening to Carl Brizzi Live. Hey, folks, I'm a rugged individualist. I'm a libertarian-leaning former prosecutor who takes a hard look at the actual facts. And in my world, those facts are called evidence. And in my world, we don't adopt the narratives of the powerful media elites. Now, listen, before anybody gets upset about what I'm going to say, I'm going to repeat what I have said many times before. I did not vote for Trump. I am not a Trump apologist. But what is going on forces me to recognize and talk about what is going on. I'm a libertarian, but Trump won the election. And ever since he's won the election, he has faced endless assaults on his legitimacy. Here we are in the third anniversary of his election, and the mob rages on. This mob of zombie-like impeachment creatures relentlessly storming the White House. Now these creatures, they're not carrying your usual torches and pitchforks. They're wielding gavels and bow ties. I'm watching them right now on the studio television set. And what I think most don't understand about what's going on is the terrifying precedent that this is creating. And this is what I mean. If the losers in any American election, if they can always declare that the election results are invalid, then we as Americans are doomed. And this is our future if we don't stop and think and understand where we are headed as a country. What if Elizabeth Warren wins? What if, my millennial children, Bernie Sanders wins? Does anyone think that they're going to be able to sell the idea that when they win, they get to keep the spoils, that they get to keep what they've won? When the other party wins, it's a travesty of justice, as is with the Trump situation. It's a sham, but when they win, it's not a sham. Ever since Trump has won, the left has literally been conjuring up one theory or another to delegitimize the election. They want to get rid of the Electoral College. They want to change how the Supreme Court justices are chosen. Friends who disagree with me on social media, friends who disagree with me face-to-face, at times I don't believe are taking the time to understand what I am actually saying. I am not necessarily defending what is going on in terms of what Trump did in these impeachment hearings. And look, he's not a role model. But we need to wake up and see this for what it really is. A slow motion attack on our institutions of government. This is a catastrophe in the making. I am watching it unfold right under my eyes. Stop listening to Rachel Maddow. Stop listening to MSNBC. I don't watch the Fox News pundits. I don't listen to them. That is not how I get my ideas. I'm not an ideologue. I don't throw out slogans. I think. And that's what I'm asking everyone to do, is just to think. And also, for the love of Pete, stop just talking to people who agree with you. Talk to people who don't agree with you. What is going on right now, as we speak, is a coup. And I will lay out over the next several minutes how ridiculous this coup attempt is, because Joe Biden actually did the exact same thing, that President Trump is accused of doing. And we're going to look at evidence. This is not going to be hyperbole. We're going to look at the transcript of the telephone call that took place on July 25th. President Trump is said to have pressed the president of Ukraine to investigate Mr. Biden's younger son, Hunter Biden, who sat on the board of a Ukrainian energy company. We don't have to guess. We have the transcript. Here's what President Trump does. He signals his displeasure with Ukraine, noting that while the United States has been very good to Ukraine, he wouldn't say that Ukraine has been reciprocal to the United States. Now, as a former prosecutor, trial lawyer, I would say that there's nothing really subtle about that statement. It's not a subtle statement. There's nothing subtle about the way President Trump speaks. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. He's a New Yorker. He sounds like a pissed-off bus driver in Manhattan. That's how he talks. My uncle was a bus driver. That's how I know how they talk. He wanted something from Ukraine. That is clear. And let's also be clear. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. There's nothing inherently wrong with the President of the United States wanting something from a foreign country in exchange for something of value. Asking a foreign head of state to investigate past corruption is pro forma. That's what we do. It happens all the time. The fact that Joe Biden is Trump's political rival doesn't make Joe Biden or his son Hunter Biden immune from possible wrongdoing. And that is what the Democrats are actually asking to happen.
Carl, when you were a prosecutor in Marion County, did you ever ask people to look into other people?
Of course.
Like law enforcement, various agencies?
We would ask special prosecutors if there were conflict. You would ask the FBI, you would ask the Sheriff's Department, you would ask IMPD to look into something to see if there's any there. And that is what Trump did. He didn't say go out and...
You weren't elected you were elected as a Republican, but you weren't worried when you were asking, hey, we think this guy committed a crime. Oh, my God, he's a Democrat. I shouldn't ask that because I'll be accused of a quid pro quo, right?
Well, of course, exactly, because then that makes your political opponents literally immune from any sort of investigation or accountability for potential wrongdoing. So let's go back to the transcript. So in the next paragraph, Zelensky responds with the key ask. He asks about aid. He wants Javelin missiles. They're anti-tank missiles. What does President Trump want? We're talking about those quid pro quo. In his own words now, Rob, and I'm reading from the transcript. The other thing, there's a lot of talk about Biden's son. This is President Trump talking. That Biden stopped the prosecution. And a lot of people want to find out about that. So whatever you can do with the Attorney General would be great. He continues. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution. So if you can look into that, that sounds horrible to me.
He said, if you can.
If you can look into that. If you can look into that. It sounds horrible to me. Now, Joe Biden is literally the one who started this whole mess because he went around bragging, it's on tape, about successfully ousting the former Ukrainian prosecutor who was investigating a company called Brizzi. Now, Brizzi, and this is a fact, is a sketchy Ukrainian natural gas company that was being investigated for multiple criminal violations. This is the same company that, while it was under investigation for multiple criminal violations, put Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, on its board of directors. Now, get this. Biden was the VP. This Ukrainian natural gas company is under investigation, puts Hunter Biden on its board, and pays Hunter Biden $50,000 per month. $50,000 per month. Hunter Biden has zero experience in the Ukraine. Hunter Biden doesn't speak the language. He has no experience or acumen in the natural gas industry. So, wow, that's one of those things that make you go, right?
You were a prosecutor. If someone brought that to you, would you say, wow, this is worth looking into?
There's some smoke. There's some smoke. There's nothing inherently illegal about being put on a board and being paid an outrageous sum of money for something you're not qualified to do, but there's smoke. It's worth at least looking into, right? The company was under serious investigation at the time, and Hunter Biden's job responsibilities included advising, listen to this is important, advising on transparency, corporate governance, and other priorities. Huh? Advising? You know what advise means, don't you? It's like when you go into a restaurant and you ask a waiter for a recommendation. Hey, what's good here? Oh, you should try the shrimp tartare, or the whatever, right? Whatever the crustacean of the day is. You should try. How would you like, the quid pro quo is delicious. How would you like that prepared? Advise? Recommend? You suggest? You just advise $50,000 a month. You know what the opposite of advise is? I had to look this up on my phone. The opposite is to instruct or to inform. Now that seems to me like maybe something of value, not just advising. I'm just advising on transparency issues. Maybe you should be a little more transparent in your dealings with the natural gas company. I mean, it's nonsense, and it should be looked into.
Because advice is what you do now as an attorney, right? That's what you do. You advise, but not for $50,000 a month.
Exactly. And quite frankly, more times than not, I'm instructing. Do not go sit down and talk to the police without your lawyer present. That's a really bad idea. Okay, normal, non-connected folks do not make $50,000 a month to advise, okay? And if you feel a little tinge in my voice, it's because, yes, I am jealous. I want a gig like that, $50K a month. Now, in 2016, Joe Biden derailed the investigation into Burisma, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is on tape. He was literally holding up $1 billion in aid to Ukraine, and he wanted the Ukrainian prosecutor who was investigating his son and the son's company, he wanted that to shut down. Now, doesn't that warrant an investigation? Why aren't we investigating that? That seems to me like a very important thing to investigate. That's taxpayer money, ladies and gentlemen, that disappeared. Now, Biden bragged about it, and now the opposition, the anti-Trump people, are saying that, well, because Joe Biden was or is a political opponent to Trump, and he's a candidate for office, that ought not be investigated. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to contrast that with what's going on with this impeachment. The Trump administration didn't withhold the aid, and the investigation into Biden was not reopened. Let me say that again so I can be clear. The aid was not withheld. The Trump administration did not withhold the aid, and the investigation into Biden was not reopened. Joe Biden gave the aid, the investigation into Burisma, and Joe Biden ended. Now, if you were just looking at those facts objectively, which one would you say had more of an air of corruption? Something that actually happened, or the thing that people talked about happening? So that if you can look into this, the United States government, this is our tax money. They have a legitimate interest in investigating whether or not Joe Biden leveraged American aid against the Ukrainian official who was investigating his son. If that did indeed happen, then that is actually what we in the prosecutor world call bribery. That is actual bribery. And after a fair investigation, if it did show that Biden corrupted the process and he's taken down, just because that fact benefits President Trump, it does not mean that it's not a legitimate thing to do. Who else other than the President of the United States can ask for this to happen? Who else has the ability, the credibility, the authority to say, look into the then Vice President's potential corruption with Ukraine and the Vice President's son? Biden was Vice President when he made it happen. The only person higher than Vice President, folks, is the President. And he did exactly what he should have done. Now, was it heavy, was it ham-handed? Was it sloppy? Should Giuliani have been involved? That's all Monday morning quarterbacking. It doesn't make it any less of a legitimate ask. And I keep waiting for an aha moment in this whole thing where those who are willing to literally do anything to delegitimize Trump's election, where they're going to realize that what they are doing is literally destroying the country. And I don't think that they're completely brain dead. So there's actually a part of me that think that is exactly what they are trying to do. And here's what I mean by that. A coup, even a soft coup, is still a coup, right? Regardless of whatever articulated, conceived, deceitful reasons that these legislators are given for the path that they're going down. Here's what I want to ask them. So, if you ask for something and get something of value, and then you do something in furtherance of what the person is giving you. So let's say you're soliciting campaign contributions, and there's a company that wants X done, and they give you Representative Joe, $100,000, and then that thing happens. Is that bribery? If it is, then every single one of these people sitting on the impeachment panel is guilty of the same crime, because that is how things work. And not just in politics either. Let's not be too Pollyannish about this. It's the way human beings work. Human beings are self-interested. Quid pro quo is the way people go through life. And it's certainly the way it works in D.C. And if you just want to take it on the most hyper level, exponential times 100, that's the way politics works around the world.
Carl, what's the difference between what Trump said and, say, what Bernie Sanders said a couple weeks ago, that if Israel wanted to continue to get money from the United States if he's president, they're going to have to change how they dealt with Palestine? To me, it's the same thing.
That's exactly the same thing. Let's take it one step further. Let's say that you accept campaign contributions, and as part of those campaign contributions, you're running for president, and you get expensive haircuts. $600-700 a haircut. You spend some of
like a normal Carl Brizzi cut, right?
I can use that example because it never would apply to me. $600 haircut. You're using campaign dollars. Now, does that personally benefit me? Yes. Does it also further the campaign? Absolutely. Is it a legitimate campaign expense? Yes. So just because something may personally benefit the person making the ask, it doesn't automatically make it untoward or illegal. And to your point, as far as foreign policy goes, that happens all the time. That kind of stuff happens all the time. Hey, if you're going to want us to continue to help you, you're going to have to do X, Y, and Z. In this case, they just didn't like what the Z was, right? Because the Z is Joe Biden, who they think, which I don't really get, is the biggest political threat to President Trump, who's Biden's polling fourth in New Hampshire or Iowa. So I don't think that these hearings are doing Joe Biden or Hunter Biden any favors at all. But I want to expand on our next podcast about what I mean about how the path that we are going down, regardless of what political party you belong to, regardless of how you feel about what Trump may have done or didn't do, but how the path of delegitimizing election results, how that is very, very, very dangerous for our democracy. Because if Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren wins, and let's say they want to start taking guns away, are you going to tell me that the other side is going to lay down for that kind of nonsense and just let it happen? No. So if we don't figure this out and start approaching these kinds of things as adults and as adults who recognize the potential consequences that this could bring in future years and future elections, we are going to be in big, big trouble. So with that said, I'll expand upon that in our next podcast. You're listening to Carl Brizzi Live. You can catch me at Twitter at Carl Brizzi.